Future Shock 2.0 with Ira Wolfe here, picking up on one of our favorite themes, artificial intelligence again. And this time Ira is going to put it all in context of the accelerating speed of computers, what that means for AI and for mankind. Here's Ira Wolfe on artificial intelligence.
What does that mean to us on an everyday basis? The real challenge is going to be the speed at which all this happens. Not the technology itself, but the speed at which the technology keeps advancing. So today's fastest microprocessor, so we all have laptops and tablets and smartphones. The fastest microprocessor that most consumers have runs at 5.5 to 6 gigahertz. Most people don't know that, but just put that number out there. That is already faster than it's 28 million times faster than the speed of the human brain. So for calculations, whether it's a simple calculation or not, it just does things a lot faster. And that's key because there's so much information. But if we take that one step further, there's, what they call supercomputers. There was a supercomputer that was placed at the University of Indiana. They just launched it. It was called the Big Red. It operates at what they call not gigahertz, but it's petaflops. So it's at 6 petaflops. It would take, and this was a quote, it would take everyone in the state of Indiana more than 28 years performing one calculation per second, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to perform the same number of calculations that Big Red can do in 1 second. So it would take 6 million people every single second of their lives for the next 28 years to do a calculation that Big Red can do in 1 day. Now, where that even gets scarier is that the fastest supercomputer now, which is called Frontier, is 183 times faster than Big Red. Now, the good news is that IBM, whether it's good news or not, but IBM owns half of the supercomputers in the world that are capable of doing this. So we have these machines that are already like so fast, but we're on the verge of quantum computing. And this is where this is fascinating to me, and this is also terrifying at how quickly we can find solutions. A quantum computer is 158 million times faster than the fastest microprocessor we have today. So think about the speed at which all this change is going to happen. And that's the limitation. If we go back to something even as simple as Uber and Lyft, and think about that over the last 6 or 7 years. Uber and Lyft, the concept was around for years. It was a taxi service. But you and I remember these days, especially you living in the city, you'd basically call the cab or you'd wave it down. But if you called the cab, you waited for it and there was no communication. You didn't know when it was going to be there and it would show up. The difference between the old way of calling a taxi and Uber or Lyft had nothing to do with, it was just time and it was a new business model. It had to do with we needed bandwidth. We needed enough people on wireless. We needed smartphones. We needed an app. So once we had enough consumers had a device in their hand that they can just click a button and it would be transmitted to a driver, the whole transaction could take place through an app, required higher speed internet, it required higher speed semiconductors, and it required somebody's business model that was created 30 years ago, implemented today. Uber and Lyft was not a new concept. It just was way ahead of its time. It just didn't have the technology. When the technology arrived, then all these new solutions were created. So think about a computer that's 158 million times faster than today's fastest microprocessor. What possibilities does that create? Now, on the same token, is we can go back and say, well, there's a lot of problems with apps. There's a lot of problems with smartphones. It's confidentiality and personal identity and theft and hacks, and people can set off bomb devices, not call an Uber or Lyft, but they can set off a bomb device using a smartphone because it's a powerful computer. But I think that's what we miss in this whole conversation. We're talking about AI as being linear. Is the next step is this micro or an incremental improvement in what it is. And we're on this exponential curve, this hockey stick right now. So I think that's the important message is how do we put the toothpaste back in the tube? And should we slow down for 6 months or 8 months? It's got to be an ongoing conversation. But I'll repeat it again. I have no idea how we cut back and only have the good guys stop the research and all the bad actors, keep developing this at that rate of speed.
Ira Wolfe, truly mind-boggling and jaw-dropping, and we'll come back to this again for sure. And we'll have more from Ira Wolfe next week. Ira is a workforce trends expert, a top 5 global thought leader in his field, host of the very popular Geeks, Geezers and Googlization podcast, a TEDx talker, author, and much more.